two very interesting style decks. One of them will be a standard that you would kind of expect to see in Modern, which is the Esper Goryo's deck. And then Francisco's going to be playing one that we are calling Nightmare Roots, which is using Chthonian Nightmare and Insidious Roots to do some fun Golgari shenanigans.
So it's like a pseudo mid-range combo deck where you're leveraging Chthonian Nightmare to trigger your Insidious Roots. And I think there's also like a couple creatures that come back into from the graveyard, like Grave Crawler, maybe some Vengevine to help trigger the roots and fuel the Chthonian Nightmare.
We'll try to get the player's deck list for you in a little bit, since there is a deck tech going on at one of the tables. The judge is unavailable to get them exactly know what's going on here, as it looks like we did have the Goryo's list on the play. He's going to surveil away a prismatic ending. Not going to be keeping that one on top, untaps, and that's for Goryo's deck. It's a very fast deck. It's probably going to be popping out a Griselbrand or an Atraxa as soon as possible, but also has the addition of some new cards like this Psychic Frog.
And we see Psychic Frog back on stream once again. It served a slightly different purpose compared to the Frogtide deck, where in the Frogtide deck, Psychic Frog is a card-evented engine as well as an enabler for Murktide. But in Goryo's, an enabler for the Goryo's Vengeance, where you get to use it to discard your dead draws in hand, like your Griselbrand, your Atraxa, and it just put them in the graveyard. You can go ahead and Goryo's Vengeance it, put it back onto the field. Here we see the play pattern here, exactly what I was talking about. Psychic Frog discarding Atraxa into Goryo's Nightmare, drawing probably 3 or 4 cards, still have a land drop. Did find the Ephemerate as well to keep the Atraxa in play. What I always say, Atraxa always find Ephemerate. They go together.
And the Ephemerate is important because the exile from Goryo's at the end of turn, if you Ephemerate the Atraxa, it's not the same target anymore.
Yeah. So get to keep the Atraxa, get to trigger Atraxa again after swinging in for 7 lifelink on turn 3. Like, this is why this deck is so popular and so powerful.
Yeah, and this is sort of the evolution, sort of like the creativity style deck, where you normally finding like Arcana Cruelty and stuff. Well, guess what? Atraxa's legendary. You can just reanimate it instead, and it's going to be doing a lot of cool things.
Yeah, so people were playing around with a same style of reanimator deck using the 2-mana spell to
persist.
Persist to put back
sorcery speed. It's a good -1/-1 counter.
Yeah. So here we see the Ephemerate. Ephemerate the Atraxa.
So we get to spin the wheel again. Maybe we find another Goryo's Vengeance. Maybe we find a Griselbrand to discard to put to the Psychic Frog. But yeah, Psychic Frog just kind of doing a lot of really cool things in Modern, to the extent of enabling all these different types of decks to do things that they want to do, like this. We see another Ephemerate, we see Grief, we see Atraxa. Grief being one of these cards that can kind of go in this list to kind of attack your opponent's hand. We see the Archaeologist in order to dig 3 cards deeper and find I believe it's just a non-land card into hand.
Non-creature, non-land.
Non-creature, non-land.
Yeah.
So you can find your spells to reanimate your creatures if you need to, and Brian just kind of doing everything now. Gets to play a Grief, exiles a Thoughtseize, because why not? And we get to see what Francisco is cooking up here. We had a Marionette Apprentice being played on turn 2, which is fabricating that servo on the battlefield. We see a Grist, we see a Grave Crawler, and we see, that's the Goblin that sacrifice. It's sort of like Viserys here, but it makes treasure tokens, right?
I think that's one of the new cards. I'm not entirely familiar.
War
is Soultrader. Yeah. So one life, sack on a creature, make a treasure token. Kind of what this Nightmare Roots is trying to do.
No, so we have Unearth targeting the Warren Soultrader, and we have a Grave Crawler. Most importantly, this is going to be a loop. if I recall correctly.
Yes, this is an infinite loop to drain. So infinite drain, but it's gonna be met with a solitude from Brian on the grave trawler. So no loop here, unless Francisco have another grave trawler, but doesn't look like he have one. I believe that's Grizz, Blood Gas, and a scoop from Francisco.
So Francisco almost had it there, was almost able to kind of come back through a ephemerated Atraxa. And we can kind of talk about that combo a little bit here as the players are shuffling for game number 2. So with the Warren Soul Trader, you can pay a life, sacrifice a creature, you make a treasure token. When you sacrifice the Grave Crawler, you can play it from your graveyard as long as you have a zombie.
Yeah.
And then as long as you are sacrificing the artifact, the treasure token, over and over again, the Marionette Apprentice will drain for 1 because that cares when artifacts die.
Yep.
So in theory, it's not an infinite amount of damage. It's just as much as life as you have. And I believe the Marionette Apprentice is a drain effect. Oh no, it's just a lose 1 life. So you can't infinitely kill somebody. So you weren't actually going to be able to deal 22 to Brian there. You can only deal as much life as Francisco had.
I see. Yeah. So Francisco didn't quite get there, but this Goryo's deck, when it does its thing, it just gets to put a bunch of answer in his hand along with any follow-up play. So I think Francisco's just looking to try to go under it with his own combo. Maybe have something like, instead of the Marionetta, maybe something like a Blood Artist to buffer the life total while he's going through the loop. But yeah,
it looks like that Francisco's list too is being just a little bit different than some of these other lists that we've seen in the same kind of category. We've seen both the Cathodian Nightmare and the Insidious Roots in decks like Flute decks. We've seen it in some Yawgmoth lists. So it just kind of seems to be like all in on this combo play and trying to go basically get it as much quickly as possible thanks to effects like Unearth. I wouldn't be surprised to see some other reanimation effects in there. I mean, like, it's not entirely modern power level when you have the Nightmare in your deck, but like Call of the Death Dweller can get back any combo pieces that you need in combination too.
yeah. So I think I've seen this kind of deck before. It's like a zombie combo deck where it leverage I think Altar, Phyrexian Altar, the one that generate a color mana with Grave Crawler and a Blood Artisan play to infinitely loop the Grave Crawler for infinite damage. But this is slightly different. So Malevolent Rumble here, be able to look at the top 4 cards and put 1 into your hand, the rest into the graveyard. I see there's a Warren Soul Trader, a Grave Crawler, and a Chthonian Nightmare, the other namesake card of the deck.
Oh yeah, the one that literally the namesake of. I needed to figure out how to spell this card because it's a mouthful. Like Cathodian Nightmare is going to be a more interesting kind of addition to this one because it's going to be an effect that you can reanimate things with as long as you have the energy for it. And it took me this long to find it on Scryfall because it's that difficult to spell.
Yeah, I think Francisco ended up putting the Nightmare into his hand.
That checks out. Has the Phyrexian Tower on the battlefield as well. Phyrexian Tower is going to be something that can kind of help mana ramp this deck as well, being able to sacrifice cards that you want in your graveyard anyway to generate 2 mana.
So he can do that with the Drowsy Spawn that he got from the Malevolent Rumble. But Brian here, I think just a slow start where it just fetch into a Surveil land, put Ephemerate into his graveyard, and follow up with a Thought Seize.
Yeah, Brian just kind of like sighing there because it looks like with the Unearth right there and the Nightmare in hand, it doesn't really matter what you take.
I think you just take the Nightmare.
I mean, you could also take your opponent's Thought Seize if you're trying to protect your Goryo's Vengeance or something.
I think Unearth could get back Grizz too, right? Because
Yeah,
Grizz is a creature in the graveyard. So yeah, I never really like these hand So these discard effects against Reanimator deck, because you're just kind of helping them out a little bit.
So it looks like that Brian has came to the same conclusion that you did, Akira. So we wind up seeing the Nightmare hit the graveyard. It's too hard to pronounce, too hard to spell, so you just don't want that one on the field, right?
Yeah.
But this just passes back over to Francisco, and Francisco most notably did have third land in hand. It looks like it is a polluted delta, so we're going to have a little bit of a crack, maybe a shock as well. But that could be representation of wrist. It could be looking for maybe the undying effect in addition, the unearth in addition to playing a follow-up spell. We saw Thought Seize in Francisco's hand as well to try to attack his opponent's hand. So lots of options right here, and it looks like with reaching for 1 mana, it's probably Thought Seize or Unearth to start this turn off. There is a Warren Soultrader in graveyard as well that could just start creating creatures.
So what you could do here is you can Thought Seize to open up the way to resolve maybe the Gris or the Unearth in your hand. This Esper Goryo doesn't play any counter magic. So the hand, 2 lands, Prismatic Ending, Solitude, Frog, and Atraxa.
Yeah, so probably looking at the Solitude as a very juicy target for this Thought Seize, getting just like creature interaction and knowing that there's the Psychic Frog actually being the one to be taken here.
So the thing is, you take the Psychic Frog, you can't leave Psychic Frog and Atraxa in the same hand.
Because you could just discard the Atraxa.
You can just discard the Atraxa, and if Brian top deck a Goryo's, Francisco's in a world of hurt, right? So Francisco just opt to try to play for a longer game with these Gris and try to fight through this Solitude Prismatic Ending. Because if Brian want to cast a Solitude, he either loses Prismatic Ending, so that's 1 less exile effect for Francisco to deal with, or lose the Atraxa, which is a Reanimator target.
Alright, so Francisco just going to be playing this Grist. Most notably, it looks like, okay, there's going to be a third color of mana here. It is an Esper Goryo's deck, so it's going to be a quick crack, fetch, shock here from Brian is going to exile the Grist, but as we know, there's 1 in graveyard, there's an Unearth in hand, and there is a second Grist in hand from Francisco as well.
And most importantly, Grist on the battlefield cannot be targeted by Solitude.
There you go. It's no longer a creature as soon as it's on the battlefield. So second Grist comes in, get a second insect token. We're probably just going to see a couple of attacks he's coming through, just on 1 day.
I have 10 shots.
Yeah, Brian, Atraxa now stuck in his hand with that Solitude. So, doesn't have any good target for the Solitude. Atraxa doesn't do anything in the hand.
Second Prismatic Ending.
Okay. Second Prismatic Ending, which is still have a Unearth to fight through for Brian. With 2 insect armors in play, the Warren Warren Soultrader can come back with the Unearth and start like pumping out treasures. And we can see Francisco maybe trying to combo off if the draw is lined up for the last couple of turns.
We still need a Marionette Apprentice or a Grave Crawler. I don't believe any of those are in the graveyards yet, so we just have the Soultrader. We don't have the other pieces for it. We did see Surgical Extraction as the draw too, so Francisco can fight Goryo's Vengeance, knowing that the Esper Goryo's deck doesn't run counter magic.
Yeah. And I know Francisco has a Grave Crawler in his hand. It's just there's the Warren Soultrader. There's a Grave Crawler in the graveyard.
Okay, so just going to be able to replay that one and passing the turn. So Francisco's got most of the pieces that he needs online. We're just missing the Marionette Apprentice to drain Brian for an infinite amount of damage, or sorry, up to 13 damage, because Francisco needs to pay life to activate the Warren.
As long as Francisco's life total is higher than Brian's life total, it's basic. It's a kill. Yeah. So we're almost I'm not sure if this deck by Court of Calling seems like a good fit in the deck.
Celestial Purge comes out, so Warren Soultrader's going to get exiled, so fighting the fight to stay alive is Brian.
Yeah, but there's another Soultrader and another, so quite a few things to still fight through. Doesn't have a combo of his own.
And this is also just the fact that Francisco could just attack next turn from the Scorn Soul Traders with 3/3, and there's already 4 additional damage on the battlefield, so land Solitude is basically what Brian has to do to live here. Okay, there's land. We know Solitude's in hand.
Yep. So Solitude on the Soul Trader, go through with a block here.
Using Nurturing Peatland, drawing a card here for Francisco. He's going to attack with everything, though, knowing about the Solitude.
I mean, you just have to crash in. Passing the turn gave Brian so much time.
I was wondering if there's going to just be a
Charles is asking, is that Goose from Brian's side?
I think it might be.
It is Goose Swamp and Goose Plains.
Yeah, oh, you can tell because of the sun moon going on there with the division in there.
Yeah, he's blinked out here.
The most important things possible. You need to be able to fetch the bling in your deck, otherwise it's not going to be as effective. So we are going to have 3 life being gained here by Francisco, and potentially a block to trade on one of these 1/1 tokens, so Brian going back up to 8. So we're a discard outlet and a reanimation effect away from still the Atraxa plan, but at this point in time, now Francisco needs to find things to do. He does have the ability to just...
So Francisco just sacking it to blank the lifelink.
Okay, yeah, that's
from Brian, yeah. So Brian down to 3, put the lifelinker on the field, so probably doesn't feel too bad. With all these Exile renewal coming out, he's in quite a good spot. Francisco graveyard is kind of empty at this point. So feel comfortable just crashing in with the Solitude.
So we got 14-5 as life totals here, just crashing in. No haste potential coming out from Francisco, unless there's, I don't know, dying type strangle root geist or something, but there's nothing that can really bring that back currently. So we're just going to have Francisco, looks like fetching down. See Marionette Apprentices on the bottom. We haven't seen the Blood Gas that we just saw in the library. That is one haste threat that could potentially end the game here. So actually surprised to see, I guess maybe no Surveil lands left. You wouldn't be able to actually landfall that Blood Gas into play this turn anyway. But Francisco now, you crack back for 3, but then you're just kind of racing, and
I don't know what that card is.
it's milling 3 cards though. Is that just a Stitcher supplier?
I believe that is the new art for Stitcher supplier.
I'm gonna look that one up here.
Might be from the commander.
Ah, yeah, there it is.
Yeah,
That one looks a little familiar. And then we're going to wind up having the sacrifice coming in as well, so we can just mill over even more cards.
Oh, so bring back another Gravecrawler. Still not quite enough.
Yeah, we did wind up getting rid of the Solitude with the Grist, however. So.
Oh, so Francisco did find a Grist.
Yep, and now we have Brian just passing the turn, representing Solitude or Die, pretty much. And Thoughtseize comes out. All right, so it is Solitude.
So drew another Solitude, and then released the last card in his hand as Atraxa.
Yeah, so that's going to be Atraxa hitting the graveyard. Because you can't take seed back seed the Thoughtseize, so you're gonna lose. You're gonna gain 2.
Oh, it's double
lose 2.
Atraxa.
Okay.
But Francisco last card is a surgical extraction, so Brian just loses both of the Atraxa here. Still attacking him with the Gravecrawler. Just to trade off with the Solitude.
Yeah, because you don't want to get rid of your thing. You have a bunch of zombies in your deck anyway. You can bring the Gravecrawler back eventually. So this is just going to be able to save Grist the loyalty. You can kind of just keep the Grist ticking up. Now the Solitudes are off the battlefield. You're fighting an empty-handed versus empty-handed fight where you're just generating a token every turn. Your opponent is no longer able to top deck a Goryo's Vengeance either to get them out of this situation.
Yep, and I mean, I don't think the Goryo's deck play any other reanimation effect that can bring back something like a Solitude or a Grief. So I think Brian might be a little bit stuck here.
Yeah, kept a bit of a slower hand, double prismatic ending for double wrist. Did not wind up being
I do have side
kind of solve things out here. And we'll see here now, just all in top deck mode. We had another Stitcher Supplier hitting the battlefield. We finally see Insidious Roots coming in. Still no blood gas, so that's not an avenue to victory here. But it does look like we are looking at our graveyard for a bit, trying to figure out what we've got. Maybe there's something we can flash back. Okay, Gravecrawler was in the graveyard. Now that we have the zombie from Stitcher Supplier, that's just going to be Rounds. So representing more than enough lethal attackers right now is Francisco, as Brian's actually going to help out a little bit by just fetching down to 2.
So the play for Brian here is to bin a something like a Griselbrand out of this Undercity sewers and top deck Goryos.
You have to hope to top deck Goryos because you actually can't draw cards off of your Griselbrand with 2 life.
You can attack those.
We got an Archaeologist. Finds Tainted Indulgence Ephemerate.
Take the Tainted Indulgence. I believe he have 5 different 4 different CMCs.
Let's say we at least know there's Dramatic Ending, there's Ephemerate, there's Lands, there's Solitude, so it looks like this is going to be draw 2. And then, no, we couldn't find anything.
Couldn't find enough action to keep him in the game. So we're going to a game 3. So we didn't really see the Nightmare Roots deck to do a combo-y thing, just a good old creature turn sideways kind of game.
Yeah, the hidden mode of these combo creature decks, which is the attacking mode, where you can just deal combat damage to your opponent's life total. So we saw Brian keeping a very controlling hand that game. It was very reliant on having the sequence of cards of discarding Atraxa with Psychic Frog and hoping to find a reanimation effect like the Goryo's Vengeance. But timely Thoughtseize coming out from Francisco, being able to take away the Psychic Frog, meant that there was no persistent threat from Brian's side, and it was basically Prismatic Ending, Solitude, deck against a deck that has Grist and recursive creature cards.
So Brian, he could have played the Frog on turn 2, but opted to go with a Prismatic Ending and playing a Thoughtseize. So
oh yeah, he played the Thoughtseize, which meant, oh, I'm gonna look at your hand to see what you got, and was like, oh no.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, you don't really care about what they have in their hand because they want them to end up in the graveyard anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think the better route there was to just play the Frog, and that had an avenue to discard the Atraxa. There was no Goryo's Vengeance on the top of his deck for a couple of turns anyways, but maybe the Frog would have just got him there through a couple of turns. Also, Frog would have protected him from the surgical distraction if we stick around. So looks like our players just started game 3 here.
Yeah, both keeping hands of 7, and looks like it's going to be Surveil Land begot Surveil Land potentially, as we see Francisco actually playing Nurturing Peatland, taking a damage instead. Might be Thoughtseize turn 1, there we go. And just a plethora of wishes. Ooh, Dranith Magistrate coming in to try to attack the graveyard angle, and Brian kind of lets out a sigh there, knowing that that's most likely going to be hit here.
Yeah. Oh, Francisco asking what the Granite Magistrate does because
it's signed, so you can't read it.
It's either signed or in a different language.
Alright, so this is...
I know Brian likes his Chinese cards.
Okay, so this is your opponents can't cast... Yep, we are getting Oracle text reading. Your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands, which means that it doesn't prevent reanimation effects, but it does prevent Gravecrawler.
Yeah, so specifically, setting in the Granite Magistrate specifically for Gravecrawler. It doesn't stop anything else but the Gravecrawler, but Gravecrawler is such a big part of this Nightmare Roots deck anyways, so shutting that off is probably a good thing.
This is a pretty stacked hand from Brian, though. If you top deck a Psychic Frog, you're golden.
Yeah, so this is a prime spots for Psychic Frog, shocking. So from what we've seen in his hand, there's nothing really for this, unless it's a prismatic ending that was drawn for turn.
So we'll end up seeing here, Francisco, going to take another look at Thoughtseize. Okay, so it was Tainted Indulgence. Downside is, though, is, okay, if you can discard Atraxa, that's fine. But now your Goryo's Vengeance is exposed. You have double Ephemerate, so now you're basically Goryo bust coming out from Ryan's side.
I don't think you can flashback Tainted Indulgence. That was a different card.
No, that was Faithful Minion.
Yeah.
They've both been played in like very similar deck styles. The Tainted Indulgence is draw 2, discard 1 if you don't have the mana values, and Faithful Minion is draw 2, discard 2, the fixed Azorius.
I believe Faithful Mending got replaced with Psychic Frog.
Oh yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense here. We are going to see Brian just drawing, passing for the turn. Francisco going to crack fetch on end step. Does find the Surveil land.
Yeah, Ryan is pretty aggressive, or like passive aggressive. From what I target with
Oh, you're talking about the hand reveal? With the
the hand reveal and the...
Listen, having been the Rakdos scam player in my Grief, Fury heydays of Modern, I can feel the vibes from across the table. I sympathize with the person being griefed or Thoughtseize, even though I'm the one that's doing it to them.
I am a proponent for Thoughtseize hate out here, so...
Oh, I know that.
I know what Brian feels like.
I'm on the side where it's the meme where it's kind of like, oh, that stinks. We just see Marionette Apprentice coming down, so this is one of the 3 combo pieces that you need from Francisco's side on the battlefield.
So this, whenever a creature or artifact is put into your graveyard, you just want to lose 2 life. So now that I've actually read the card, with Gravecrawler and I keep forgetting the card, the Goblin.
Oh, the Warren Soultrader.
Yeah, the Warren Soultrader. It's 2 damage every Gravecrawler. So you don't need that much life. You don't need your life total to be higher than your
So you can, as long as you have at least, so if they're at 20, you need to have at least 19.
No,
because it doubled,
if they're
right?
at 20, you need at least 11.
At
because
least
you
11?
need 10 life to do 20 damage.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. You need at least 11, which Francisco is currently at.
So, rumbling here, we'll end up getting a Eldrazi spawn and double couple cards in the playing yard.
Oh, this is nice. There's that Bloodghast that was absent from game number 2, and we see the Warren Soultrader. So if we wind up having any sort of unearth effect, that's going to be coming into play.
There is the unearth.
All right, so we have most pieces assembled. We don't have a Gravecrawler.
We still have a land drop.
Okay, we still have a land drop, and we could have land drop, Gravecrawler, and that would be not quite. That would be enough because Francisco has at least 8 life and Brian is at 16.
Yeah, I just got it.
No, but the thing is, do we have a Gravecrawler? Or
That's what
just
we're missing. We're missing the
Bloodghast?
Gravecrawler. So right now it's just the Bloodghast. If we had Gravecrawler in hand, that would be combo assembled, everyth's online. But right now we're just looking at Bloodghast, beatdown next turn with a land drop. Let's see, we're looking at 2, 3, 4, 7.
I believe is lethal.
1 damage short.
I believe it's lethal. Because you still get another. You can play another creature as well. So
Okay, so one more creature, especially the second Bloodghast. That's what we got.
Ryan have to double fetch as well, so he's down to 14.
Okay, so this could be just potentially lethal here.
And here comes the Guru land.
Got a style.
Got a style before you lose.
Alright, so we're looking double Guru land here.
Double
Fetches. This is untap Solitude would be great because I can stop the Warren Soultrader. Oh, actually, Wrath of the Skies.
So rather, a lot of Goryo decks started playing Wrath of the Sky in the sideboard. Personally, I don't think it's good.
It looks pretty good here.
But yeah, the thing is, Wrath of the, you don't generate any energy. So Wrath of the Sky is like a 4 mana Wrath usually. There's another card that you can play for 3 mana that does the same thing called Temporary Lockdown.
Okay, well that works, but it wouldn't get rid of Horn Soultrader in this circumstance. But neither does this actually, because you're only generating 2 mana.
Yeah, you're only generating 2 mana. So Temporary Lockdown accomplishes the same thing for 1 less mana.
What we're happening here is, while this is still on the stack, we are having Francisco sacrifice a bunch of creatures and artifacts. We're trying to start draining, laying down as low as possible. That will, of course, mean that the Bloodghast goes into the graveyard as opposed to being exiled. So that means with a land drop and a second Bloodghast in hand, Brian now going down to 10 will trigger the haste ability from that Bloodghast, and Francisco just basically trying to find the similar lethal line here. Well, this Marionette Apprentice is going to be exiled unless we have some sort of shenanigans going on, but it does look like that yet another Bloodghast has been found as well.
Yeah, I don't think this matter. I don't think the Wrath of the Sky matter. Because now Francisco just sacked all his sacked all the treasure from mana, ping Brian down to 8. And the Warren Soultrader is a 4/4, a 4/4 or a 5/5? Yeah, it's a 5/5. Didn't have the land to get the Bloodghast back.
Okay. And I guess the Bloodghast was discarded rather than being bound.
Yeah.
So we didn't actually have Bloodghast in hand to swing in, but now we have backup Marionette Apprentice and lethal on board. Brian, are we at second Wrath of the Skies? We got Solitude. Ooh, Goryo's Vengeance. What the surgical extraction? That should basically be it. Lights out.
Francisco.
There we go. All right, Francisco with the Nightmare Roots deck. The Soultrader zombie combo comes out on top of the other graveyard deck in Goryo's Vengeance.